There we go. Okay, I will call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. This is the April 13th, 2022 meeting of the Public Art Ad Hoc Committee of the City of Philomath. I'm Christopher McMorran. I'm the chair. I am Zooming to you from Los Angeles today, but I am in attendance, and we will start with a roll call. Zena Allen. Absent. Ruth Kazi.
Here.
Sally Duell.
Here.
Jen Edwards is absent, excused. Shar Fagerston.
I'm here.
Nancy Froelich.
I'm here.
Wonderful. Janelle LaJoy.
I'm here.
And Peggy Yoder.
Here.
Okay. And then we are joined by Chelsea Starner from the city, as well as, do we have both Marks and Garcia with us?
Yep. Yes, and Chris Workman is also here.
Oh, yes, and Chris Workman. Okay. Well, perfect. Then we can move on. As I hope you all saw Chelsea's email, we don't have the minutes from the last meeting to review at this meeting, so we're just going to review those at our next meeting. We'll review 2 sets of minutes like we did one other time. So I hope nobody has any objections to that. If not, then we will move on to our business, which we just have one quick, well, maybe not quick, we have one agenda item for the evening, which is further discussion of our sidewalk inlay and bike rack design. So I will turn it over to either Chelsea or Marks Garcia. And Chelsea, since I'm not in the room, if you kind of maybe want to handle calling on people if they have their hands raised and stuff, that might
We'll
be
help with that. All right. I don't have a whole lot to say in the beginning because we're all waiting to hear from Andrea and Deanne. So go ahead and take the floor.
So today we're going to see the designs for the other 4 inlays, as well as a revision of the conifer. Also, is that the mic? Is that the direction we'll be aiming in?
Both of these, it'll pick you up.
It'll pick you up.
Cool.
Don't worry about
As well as a revision of the conifer forest that you saw last time. And then we've also worked on the bike racks, so we'll show those after. So first I'm going to just walk you through, yep, that's what I just said. I'll walk you through the designs of the inlays, and we've got a handout as well that for everybody, so you can kind of aid in the discussions. It's a little harder to comment on things up on the screen from far away. And we can discuss any revisions you have on those before we move on to the bike racks. So this is where we landed last time.
They're in the same order. These aren't in the same order, I don't think, as up there.
Okay.
So, but they're for reference.
Okay.
Yeah. We received some feedback on this, particularly around the text, especially to make it all caps. We were supposed to work on the negative space. We were going to remove the names of the species that are represented, and instead we're going to focus on placemaking by putting in here the City of Philomath. And then we also had some discussions with David Lewis from Oregon State and the Grand Ronde Tribe and Kalapuya Tribe as well. And he gave us a little feedback on how we might represent the Indigenous perspective in the text.
So I might just add, Dan, right here. Can you go back one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just a recap on this was we're going in the icon direction. That came out of the last meeting 2 weeks ago, as you said. And then we decided that the spacing and such on the one we showed needed refinement. Both the committee talked about it and we agreed. So we just use that as a jumping off point for, now you can continue with it. The next one.
So the first thing we did essentially was we realized we needed to create ourselves a library of icons. So we spent a lot of time drawing icons to represent all the key species that then we could use in our compositions. So trying to show it to you in a similar way as last time, where we have both the line art as well as a mock-up of what it might look like in the sidewalk. And again, not super representational, it's Photoshop. But once we also look at these, then we'll need to, next step will also be to talk with Rich Lee to make sure that everything we're doing is actually possible before we get too far down the road to sending files and have him say like, oh, that's too small or whatever. So this is the revision of the mixed conifer forests. One thing that we wanted to do was find a way to unify all the compositions that had a lot of different types of species by making something more radial. One thing that we really liked about the composition that we showed last time was the fact that you could view it from many directions and it would still feel upright. There was no experience that felt like I'm seeing everything upside down. So we're trying to work with that circular aspect of it in all 5 of these. We also brought in some texture elements to help out with some of the negative space and also just to sort of reference some of the elements within the icons themselves. Yes, and then the text, we put in the city of Philomath, and then we'll show you 2 different versions of how the indigenous language could be represented here. This one says Kalapuya Anuwa, which translates to Kalapuya country. So we like that because it felt like it was analogous to naming the city of Philomath. We're also naming this as the Kalapuya country. And we'll show another version that uses Chipenafu as the language, which is something that David had suggested to us in that's sort of what the Kalapuya people called this whole region, which is also the name of Mary's Peak. So we can go kind of either way. He said that either one would be acceptable. And it's sort of our choice, I guess, how we want to, what direction we want to choose, or if we want to put some different language on different versions.
And and we did appreciate your email, Ruth, on the land acknowledgement and such, and we thought we'd talk about that maybe at the end of our presentation, because these get so busy, it's hard to put a lot of text on these, so we have some other thoughts on how to do more land acknowledgement.
And the next one here is the oak savanna. So this one's showcasing the oak and deciduous trees, the great horned owl, and woodpeckers in this piece, along with some textural elements. And I feel like maybe I should just move through them and then we can kind of look at them all together. This is our meadows and grasslands. We're showing the Fender's blue butterfly along with lupin as its main food source, and red-winged blackbirds, plus wild strawberries and tiger lilies. This is rivers and riparian zones. So this is an example here where we're using the Chipenafu language, and it takes up a little bit less space, so it may be more of a compositional decision as well, which one we go with. So we've got trout, red-legged frogs, pond turtles, beavers, and elements to reference the water and cattails. And this is the wetlands, which showcases mostly migratory birds and the camas as well, which was a really important species we wanted to make sure we got in. Camas apparently grows in like 4 different biomes. So we thought it would be ideal to place in here since there's a little less in terms of the flora in the wetlands that isn't just grass. So we like to put that in here. And we're also using the root of it as well because that was the food source. And so here's all of them up in mock-up form. And then I've also got a slide with them as line art. I'm not sure which would be easier to comment on or view, but we've also got them printed out. So
Yeah.
do you have a preference on how we discuss?
What do you all think? Look at the.
Maybe leave that up since we have the other one here.
Cool.
Could I ask for a quick recap? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I missed the meadow. I got Fender's blue, wild strawberries, but I was busy taking notes and missed what you said.
Red-winged blackbird, I think.
Red-winged blackbird,
Okay.
tiger
Thank you.
lily, and lupin in the center.
Awesome. Cool, thank you.
Kelsey, can I chime in?
Yeah.
I guess just my thoughts, I like the direction everything's going, and I think I like sort of the evolution from what we saw at the last meeting to this. The only thing that stands out to me is, and I don't remember which ones these are, but the ones with the like migratory, yeah, there we go. The wetlands and the rivers and riparian. I almost wish they had like a little more of the sort of like iconography to them. Yeah, just because like the meadows and grasslands, mixed conifer and oak savanna are very sort of, circular, radial, and have some more stuff to fill them up. And those two are a little simpler. But it seems like you've already thought of that from your reaction there.
Yes, this is definitely a valid comment because one thing we found through the process of drawing them all was that some animals and plants were much easier to abstract than others, and so we wanted to make sure we had compositions and drawings of everything. But I think that our intention would be to move those ones that are more representative toward abstraction through some more refinement. It was a pretty big lift to do all of these in 2 weeks. And so we wanted to just make sure we had them to discuss instead of trying to work on making a few of them really perfect, but get them all out here. So I think our intention would definitely be to move them so that they're a bit more in line. So
Okay.
you picked up on it quick.
I think Nancy has had her hand up. Let Nancy go first.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go back to because otherwise it's hard to refer to them without the names. I agree with what Christopher just said, but I actually really like the wetlands one for being a little bit more detailed and having some dimension, like the bird flying. I'm not sure who he's representing.
Northern harrier.
What's that?
That's the northern harrier.
Okay. But I really liked that about that one. But I do agree that there is a little bit of variation between the density of each piece, and maybe that's fine. And also, I did want to say that the rivers and riparian stood out to me in that it seems like there's a right way to look at it, whereas the other ones have some things that are upside down, so you could move around it and still be in the right spot, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then Ruth had a comment.
Excuse me, I just wanted to ask if it would be possible to incorporate the name of the biome in each piece, because otherwise, unless you go to whatever reference material there is, it just looks like a collection of icons.
Yes.
That doesn't really. Wow, look, frogs and beavers. Isn't that cute?
So yeah, on your last design, I think you had
We had the names,
names and then the biomes, and I think everyone liked having that. It seemed like,
I think we did
and that was
too.
something I think that they didn't want to lose if we were going to add Philomath, and that they didn't want to lose that losing the names of what is, the species was, if that had to happen, okay, but to keep the names of the biomes, because then that's your whole theme, and people would still know what it's about, I think.
Absolutely. Oh, I guess I'm not supposed to.
Are you? Yes. I think you're following up to that.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask why people objected to the species names.
I think the thought was that there were a couple things that came up with species names that were on the inlays, and that it could be a concern that there may be something that we don't all know about a species that makes it in some way, I don't want to say offensive, but I suppose to some people it could be offensive, or just something that people feel is not native wildlife. How long, how long do they have to be here for us to consider them And I think that was part of it, is just how do you actually define what might be okay to write on there or not?
On that note, one thing I forgot to mention was that the owl in the timber, or in the conifer one, we adjusted that to more closely resemble a short-eared owl rather than a barred owl. Yeah.
Okay.
That was important.
Nice native
Yes.
little owl.
On the owl
Right.
It's
note,
not a spotted owl.
since we're on the owl note, can I just talk about that? So thank you for that. I think that's important. Can I ask why we also have not included a different genus of bird in the oak woodlands?
Maybe
In the center, we have an owl.
hawk, a different bird of prey.
Maybe
Falcon.
something different. And then
Sure.
also I'm thinking on the wetlands, we have all large, sort of like charismatic birds. How about other migratory birds that use the wetlands that might be small? Right, songbirds, like a songbird,
Yes.
because these are all just like the big birds that everyone sees. How about the ones we hear?
Absolutely.
Right, like the red-winged blackbird, I like that, but like these are all just very large birds. It's like putting the polar bear and the grizzly, and like forgetting about the, I don't know what, the newt. Just saying. Sorry.
I could say that one reason we went with these particular birds was that they are very different from each other. And we were concerned about trying to make sure that they were identifiable with the level of abstraction that we're going for it.
For sure.
But I think that that's a good point. And I know we had the Western Meadowlark was on our original list, which is our state bird, which
Right, the
probably
Western
still work.
bluebird.
Mhm. Oh yeah, we have so many bluebirds here.
We have more
Hummingbirds.
bluebirds than meadowlarks. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, hummingbirds are a good one. And then so that brings me to my other question about which woodpecker are we representing in the oak woodlands?
But without the names, is anybody going to be able to tell one from the other? No.
People in this valley, yes.
There's
There's a heavy bird
It's true. We got the
birding
bird
population.
watching permit.
We can still talk about putting species names on the kiosk too, if we want to include that.
Yes,
We're in a brochure, and we talked about a web page, things like that, right?
for sure.
But I think it would be important to know what is being represented for when we get to that point, right?
What the intention was for
Right.
print later.
Fair.
is all.
Okay. Peggy has a comment.
Before the comments made by Chaz, I know that we were all excited about highlighting and celebrating the species itself. What if, and I think we all liked the designs that we were going, at least I got the feeling that we were, what if we were to propose to the city council, because Chaz is one vote, and he knows that, if we were to present the inlays with kind of the designs that we were going at, that we were working on, and one with the species, with the names, like what we were going, and then one that says City of Philomath.
So more like the text ring.
The text ring, and then let the city council make the decision, who is really the one that, people that are gonna make the decision. Or is this already, the conversation is done? I mean,
No, it's not done. I just think it would probably be good for us to talk about that as a committee and see if we can reach a consensus.
sure, yeah.
I think having the city council decide less is always better than more if we can.
But if we gave them two options, they're
offense, Rich.
identical except for what it says. I like this one, I like this one.
Right.
I
Well,
think
so I guess that's where we should just if the committee feels really strongly one way or the other, I think we should just go with that. But if the committee is open to presenting two, then we can. Do any committee members have strong feelings? Is that?
I have a comment, Christopher.
Okay.
Well, I think one concern is that if that's what's being asked, it would be a complete second set of designs, which is an additional scope. So that's one thing. But I did commit to updating the city council the day after these meetings on what you've talked about, what has come up. so that we can make sure that we get that feedback. And so if that's something as a committee that you want to say, we feel very strongly about this, I can send that off to the city council tomorrow and try to get a little bit of feedback individually from them and see where we feel like we're at and let you all know if that's an option. I mean, that way we could probably keep things on track and avoid multiple different designs being made,
Yeah.
Can I clarify what I said? Because I think it's been misunderstood. They would be, say the design that we had a couple weeks ago.
Could you
And
go
it-
back to the first
Okay.
one? Yes.
Yeah, that one. Instead of what it says, mixed conifer forest, and then the species names. So, but it would look exactly like that, but all of that would be gone where it says mixed conifer forest and the species names. And it would say like what this says, City of Philomath. And then Kalapuya Anuwa.
in the biome.
Would that be too much of a difference of asking?
Are you saying that design, that particular design in the middle? Or
Just
just
the text.
Just the text to,
It's like the design in the middle, which I thought we liked the design in the middle. I thought overall we liked the design. Maybe we didn't.
I think what you're saying is the design
That's this
itself
now.
seems like it has changed quite a bit. It no longer has.
So
Okay.
that is off the
circle with
table. That
text.
that's off the
Well,
table.
we got some feedback that I thought that, I guess we took the feedback and we just didn't think that actual dividing it up and all in clusters was the way the committee wanted to go. And so we moved it out of that division of parts with all the lilies together and all the, the law, like, I guess maybe, I don't know if you heard that too, Deanna?
Yeah,
That
I
we-
think it was because there was, we had comments and we also had concerns about hierarchy for one thing, because everything was basically
About
the same size,
yeah.
as well as the use of negative space was brought up a couple of times. So we wanted to keep the spirit of the icons, but work with better hierarchy, et cetera. And so also when we started looking at all the other things that we had to represent, it became, we needed a more of a unifying principle that we could work from. And the stricter division of this was making it a little bit harder to do that. So we were attempting just to take what was good about this and then move it into something that had a little bit better hierarchy, a little bit more unification with the other pieces as well. But if, this isn't a final draft either, like these.
Right.
Yeah.
Peggy, what you were saying is, I think that you thought that the committee as a whole liked having the circle, the separation between the design maybe and the words on the outside. It was, I think the issue.
That's what I got out of it.
Are you just talking about?
I think we're talking about the edge, the circle on the outside.
Okay.
So I think
we can shrink the design and put a ring on it.
I
That's
think-
fine.
okay.
I thought you were talking about the actual design.
Well,
in the
and
middle.
I think that you did like the design. It does sound like you had some potential issues with when you were trying to put other icons in, it wasn't working as well as it did with this. Is that kind of what you're saying? And I know that some comments were that it was a little they were too crowded.
Yeah, and we
So-
did redraw the icons too, because those were ones we found.
Okay.
So we did some.
We wanted to tweak them.
So I think you guys are getting a lot of comments, maybe not from the committee as a whole, but you're getting comments individually. So I can understand why you've got some confusion. I've got some confusion, and I've been in all the meetings. I think I missed one.
I think all the feedback that they've gotten outside of the meeting, you've all seen that
Yeah,
on the-
feedback.
on the
Everyone
emails,
has seen
okay.
that. So there's nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think that.
So originally what I think, that picture that you have right there, the first one that I thought we liked, maybe I just need to know if maybe we didn't all like it.
Well, maybe we should talk about how do people feel about the new concept? Is there anything about it that you dislike? Do you like it? Would you like to see a more defined circle with text? Ruth, do you want
I actually prefer this design.
to? Okay.
I think it's more somehow, to me, and I'm not a designer, but it feels more cohesive than these individual icons floating around. And I love the city of the Philomath and the Kalapuya and Niwa. But I mean, obviously, those can be put on the other design very easily. I think this sounds really snobby, but the original design looks more intellectual to me. And this looks a little bit more childlike, maybe.
Cartoon, like cartoony.
But that's my opinion.
No, I
Which is
agree.
often the minority.
I think that we liked where we were going to before the input. And I guess that's what I was trying to say when it comes to giving it to the city council, was taking the design that we had originally were excited about and then giving the city council two looks, one that doesn't have any other words other than City of Philomath and then the Kalapuya. But the design is the same. And then the city councilors who are going to be making the decisions, because there's 7 people. Not that we don't respect Chaz's input, we do, but I don't know if he should be the deciding factor. Yeah.
Can I just interject?
And I don't know, he's not ultimately a deciding factor. I do think it is important. He is the mayor. And I think his reasoning for wanting that is so that when pictures are taken of these things, that people see that when it's out on the internet, people know that where they're from. And I think that was really at the heart of it. That was his, I mean, the species was a thing that was easy to resolve, but I think that having Philomath on there somehow, City of Philomath, was important for that reason. And I can't speak for the city councilors, but I think most of them probably would agree that having that on there for that purpose would be a good idea. And if the design were similar to somehow the first design with a circle, you have that's an easy thing
Yes.
to change
the text around
what
it.
text is there. So I think it would be easy to show the counselors the options and kind of have that solidified
Yeah,
at
I
the
don't
end.
think
Does that
that's
sound
not a
like something
problem at
reasonable?
all.
Okay.
I think the bigger issue for us is going to be the just overall direction. Going back to this, we didn't feel that this was really 100% resolved. I mean, it was really intended to be shown as a concept so that it would be a jumping off point for the rest of them. And we did get feedback on this composition. So it wasn't just the feedback that we were given over email with the text. That's fine. I mean, we can change text. But in our meeting last time, then negative space and hierarchy were both brought up. So,
And the lines and dividing was brought up.
Nancy did bring the lines up.
And
Yeah. And
Can I just chime in for a second? Because I just want to keep us sort of on track here in terms of what we're trying to accomplish today. I'm a little scared of trying to go back and kind of go to the initial step. So I guess where are the problems that people are seeing with the direction that we've gone? Is it, Ruth talked a little bit about it looks a little more cartoony than maybe we wanted. Are there other things people can point to with these designs that are not what folks were envisioning? I just think it might be better to kind of focus on some specifics. Is that a hand from Shar?
yeah, I want to say one comment, which is we don't want to have a setback in timing on this. However, we also don't want to get these wrong. So if we have to, just ask our engineer to please, phone a friend and try to get an extension on delivery of these, or we have to talk to Rich and say, Rich, what can we do? Please move us up the list. That's more favorable than getting something ending up with something here that
These are very
that you don't
permanent.
like, right?
Yeah.
So I will say that it's important. And then just to maybe focus also a little more, I kind of want to get a poll, do a poll here. Is everyone thinking that the first design, there were some tweaks, the wording you felt like could be bigger, or the space could come out more so that, that it filled that outer ring a little bit more. But are you all feeling like that's more the direction you want to go? I think that's an important question.
The first one.
The very first one that you saw, are you
The
feeling
exact same way,
like these look
Just that
are
kind of
different, but
design.
is this,
only with tweaks.
when you see the new ones, are you feeling like you wanted something more like this?
I think
I know I just talked. Can I just say one thing?
You're the chair, yes.
Another one thing.
I think just the sort of in response to Ruth's comment too, I think part of it might be that although it's less busy in the new ones, they almost have more empty space because the icons themselves are larger. So there's more sort of blank area inside the icons or around them, which I think might be part of where sort of the like cartoony aspect comes in. And then I think the other thing, and I'm not a graphic designer, so I don't know, but might be too that like all the lines are almost the same like weight, which I think might make it seem a little like there's not a ton of variety, so it's kind of easy for your eye to skim over it, which I think maybe is one reason people like the circle in the other one, because it's a very thick weight, so it does have some sort of delineation between the things. Because I do like sort of this radial theme in these, and I kind of like where we're going with that, but I do agree that it's not, there's something about it is not quite as intellectual as Ruth said. But yes, with that, I will stop talking and let people whose hands are up talk.
Nancy's had her hand up for a little bit, and I'm sorry, Nancy, I don't know for how long. I just saw you with your hand up.
That's okay. I hear what everyone is saying, and I am really on the fence about that hard circle. I think is what people are responding to, the defined circle between the type and then the imagery. I sort of like in the wetlands one, for some reason, I'm really responding positively to that one. I feel like there's an interaction with the creatures, the animals and everything, and the type. Whereas with the circle, it's like very distinctly, the type is separate from the imagery. And really, I could go either way. The one thing that, can you go to like, there was like a grid of all the icons, not designed within, yes. So my feedback is I feel like there's two distinct styles of illustrations happening. One that could be argued is more cartoony, and one that's more illustrative and has more detail in the aesthetic and the style. So I guess what I would like to see is us pick one and then go forward with that. So like, for example, the acorn is really a flat graphic. And then there's like an acorn, it's really flat. And then there's other ones that have more dimension, like the Canadian goose is sort of like, has some perspective to it a little bit. I don't know if I'm the only one responding to that. Same like with the owl, he's very flat looking compared to like the grass that has some depth to it. So that's the one thing that I would want to see more consistency with, is just the icon style. And I can really go either way with the circle defining the type. So that's all.
Janelle.
Sorry, I'll be as quick as I can. I totally agree with Nancy, weird. But I think that the, like the grass, the heron, the outer ring of the conifer forest, those all have a certain look, even the center of the meadows, much different than the owl, which looks sort of more like maybe cut and pasty shapes on the program.
It's as abstract as it can be.
It can be,
And
right.
something
And
else.
so I think, partly, yes, I think we should agree on that. I was also going to suggest that might be what you were talking about, that like on the mixed conifer that, well, first of all, do we need city of Philomath or can it just be Philomath?
Well, I think we discussed both options of Philomath, maybe Philomath or Philomath, Oregon, or City of Philomath. I mean,
I'm just wondering if Philomath is an option to save
Save
type space, to then be able to have the name of the biome, and maybe something like coordinates where you could find it, or something else, on the other side to balance that, so that you could put more information there. And then maybe that would be a way to bring that ring back that everyone was thinking of, but make it maybe a softer ring. And on the inside is where, I don't think it's hops, but it looks like hops, but like where these things could then come from the inside of that softer circle. So it's really the same design, just a
Yes.
little shifty. And then I vote for the more realistic 3-dimensional. I think that might, by putting those in, might also solve a little bit of the problem of having the hard ring if the images are softer. I think that's
Yeah,
all
you
I'll
just
say.
ask, and you're still saying keeping the Calipulia and
Whichever one we choose, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was just thinking if you Google Philomath, nothing
there
comes
aren't
up
many
but us.
Philomaths.
There's nothing else that comes up. So maybe city of is space that we don't need. I don't know.
Mhm.
I guess, just to clarify, my concern, I guess, is just, it seems almost like we're moving towards the other option that was presented at the last meeting in terms of having the animals and stuff be a little more realistic and 3-dimensional looking. So I'm just kind of trying to gauge the room on what we're going, like, what do we like about, why did we choose the sort of icon look? And then what do we like about the more realistic look, and how are we kind of trying to combine those? Because that's, I guess, where I see a little bit of a disconnect is I don't think we're saying that we want to do the full like realistic illustration look that we saw at the last meeting, but if we like the more 3-dimensional animals, but we also like this sort of iconographic look, what are we looking for?
I think that's the big question, is the original design that you presented that everyone selected was iconic. It was not 3-dimensional at all, really. And so that's a big question, because now you're seeing some 3-dimensional looks and maybe leaning a little toward that. They're kind of different things.
Oh, I was just gonna,
Oh.
getting back to the
Nancy
city
again.
of Philomath, we haven't decided on which, the Calipuya or the other, is that correct?
No,
We haven't decided which Indian name?
not yet.
Okay, well, why can't we do both and still have even Philomath, OR or something like that, and then you could have the three. It seems like you could, I mean, I guess it would make the text smaller, but
I think,
choose,
yeah.
why not just do the two?
I think the question was whether we were going to ask to have the biome names on there as well. So if you had all of that and the biome names, it is going to shrink the text size, and it's going to make it pretty busy
Yeah.
around the perimeter. So I think that's the question is, what do we want at this point? I think that is taking a sort of a backseat to what we're doing with the design. That is something that we need to decide on, but design, I think that's an easier thing for you
Yeah.
to handle with design than.
I think we could perhaps even just send an email presentation that showed a couple quick iterations of what the text could look like.
Sure.
Just so
Different
there's
ways.
a
Yeah.
conversation. Sorry, it wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily require a whole meeting and presentation, but just,
Right.
it would be very quick and easy for us
Okay.
to iterate on that, if that's helpful.
That sounds good. Did someone else?
Nancy.
Nancy has her hand up, so I'm gonna let Nancy go, then Shar.
I forgot what I was gonna say. I guess I just wanted to explain further what I was saying about the illustration style. I wasn't saying I liked one over the other. I was just saying that they could be more consistent throughout, whether they go really simplified, iconic, and I totally understand that some of these creatures are very challenging to make super simple, and some are easier and some are difficult. And so I think you did a good job of like just making choices so that we could still recognize them. It's just that some have quite a bit more detail than others. And so
I agree.
I guess I'm wondering, the other thing to remember is these are never going to be seen together as a group, as a person walking around on the street. So we do want them to share a similar visual language, but they don't need to be exactly the same. So I guess I'm backpedaling a little bit in what I'm saying, but I do really like, I'm just gonna like say the things I really like. I really like that you picked like simple marks that sort of reference the biomes. So like you have dashed lines in the mixed conifer, and then it looks like you're repeating the flower in the meadowlands, and the rivers have like watermarks. I guess I'm curious in the wetlands if there's something that sort of language can be carried over. And then the oak savanna, I'm not sure what the plus verse signs are referencing.
They may have come out of the cross hatches in the acorn.
Cross hatches, yeah.
That makes sense.
But I understand that the reference is a little bit more abstract kind of decoration in a way. Yeah.
But I like that theme is happening in some shape or form in each one. So
You could do like a woodpecker footprint.
Oh.
Mhm.
Interesting.
If we were to go, I know that you tried to take a vote a little while ago. I don't know, we didn't really.
Yeah, you weren't ready yet.
Well, okay, we weren't ready that. I think one of the first things that I thought I saw with the mixed conifer one was there's just nothing pretty about an axe and a stump. You know?
Yeah.
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 There's nothing
We talked
inviting
about
about it.
We talked a lot
Maybe
about
switch that one out.
Yeah.
That's my first circle thing. I agree.
Yeah,
We
you know,
had-
and maybe don't, because it's an owl, and if we're not gonna have names, people are gonna,
All sorts of inferences coming from
Yeah, we
that.
talked a lot
right,
about that.
that's one,
We just didn't
and I
remember.
I really like that we worked to celebrate the flora and fauna. I really like it that we were gonna celebrate that, and if we're not gonna celebrate that and just have a bunch of icons, then, I would say minimize the owls, maybe put another bird, but definitely remove the axe and stump.
Sure.
So, let's see, a lot of things. So I think Christopher asked, what was it about the first design that we were all drawn to? And I think maybe answering that question can help resolve a lot of these other things. And I think what we all, and correct me if I'm speaking only for myself here, I think what we responded to as a group was the engagement with the complexity of the design. And the elements were simple, but the design was engaging in every way. So I think and I would say having the circle around it kind of also helped with the movement of it and the way that those elements kind of, I don't know if it's placement necessarily or just, I don't know exactly what it was about it. It just created a lot of movement and engagement all around. And I think the designs that you've created for these that are most successful with that type of engagement to me are the mixed conifer. I think having that radial symmetry going on there, and also the meadows are the most similar to this type of I don't know, feeling. then I think it gets a little bit lost with, so the Oak Woodlands, you've got one central image that for sure feels like it has a right way, you know, and the same with your riparian. I feel like the riparian one could be resolved pretty simply to create more, you know. And I know you were talking about having different priorities, visual priorities, and, you know, even just the center, is that a horse tail? Sorry, I'm not remembering.
Cattail.
Thank you. The cattail, you know, just, I think you could almost mirror image it, you know. And then, I don't know, I think like with the wetlands one as well, it's not, like, I
It's not
agree
as
with,
centrally
yes,
rooted.
I agree with Nancy that there's a very nice interaction with the grass to the edge. But if the intention, and I think this is where we kind of need to make the decision, if the intention is to have defined text, defined circle, defined design that is engaging from any angle, like, is that the goal of this? Or is the goal, we wanted to say certain things, have certain things on it, you know, I mean, like, I think maybe defining just the very core elements, again, that we were drawn to initially can kind of help drive where the rest of it's gonna go. Is that a helpful point of discussion?
Well, I feel like you all really liked that the first design was engaging and that you could look at it from different, I mean, I think everyone had feedback about that aspect of it. And it was one of the reasons why the other design that was brought forward, that was something that you said about it, that you could just see it from one direction. And
right.
Yeah. Chris has a comment.
Just go back to the first, because I wasn't here for those initial comments, but looking at the original one, is part of that additional engagement that's being referenced because of the additional writing that's around there. I mean, the image itself forces you, but the writing itself, I mean, it kind of forces you as you're looking down to kind of walk in a circle around just so that you can read as you're going. So I almost kind of think on the others where there's less text, City of Philomath and the indigenous name, that you can read that upside down, sideways, whatever, and you don't really feel like you're forced to really engage with it because there's just less text there. So bringing in additional text, whether it be the city and the indigenous name and the, you know, the label of the area that you're looking for, but maybe adding more text will make it feel more engaging, which is what I seem to be hearing from the group that they like about this one.
Right, and I do feel like that was said last time. Someone said that having the things of interest around it to look at, and this is kind of what I think Peggy's been getting at, is that this gave you a lot of information about what you're looking at, and there were words to look at that drew you into looking at the design. And so it definitely is a difference when you remove some of, you know, what is there. And I don't think that that's going unnoticed. And I do think that if you are going to ask to go to a design that has more of this sort of a layout, that it will be easy to look at some other options for what text to put around it. I think that's an easy fix to look at those options.
Does it feel like this level of complexity in this is sort of what's causing people to have to engage? Because I'm struggling a little bit with the use of the word engagement, just what that actually is indicating. So.
Well, I can just say, not that my opinion is not on the committee, but when I saw this, I liked the lines. I felt like they drew you to all of the points to look at what was there. The major thing for me was that, and really part of it is just the size of the text, you know, but you could make it larger to kind of fill that space more, but then you might have very large text. So the thing that I thought, and I thought that several people kind of said this, is like pulling out the black circle.
Mhm.
So
Bump
that,
the circle out.
the darker, thicker circle, pulling that out a little more so that there's less space for the font, but keeping the font like capitalized and about the size of the mixed conifer forest.
So just
So that
erasing
pulling it
it.
out. What does
Like
that
just like expanding it.
Enlarging, I'm sorry. Enlarging
enlarging.
the dark
Like the
circle so
whole-
that it's closer to the bottom of the text.
So the ring of text is in a smaller space, essentially.
Yeah, so
So then the ring of,
Right.
of images or icons has larger space, right?
So I'm thinking if that inner circle, the thicker circle, were the whole piece, you're in whatever design software you're in, and it was all together, that you were just like pulling that out and making it fill that space a little bit more. And I think that's what several of you had kind of talked about, is that if you made the text a lot larger, it would just look too large. Okay, Janelle has her.
Okay, I think that's exactly right, that if you just, I missed part of that text meeting, but I think that was what I understood, was that the text is great, no matter what it says, but just making less white space between the bottom of the text and the ring, that gives you more room for the icons. And then I really just personally like the idea, and I think that I might be kind of hearing this, is that like the mixed conifer, the meadows, that idea of having the flora sort of around the edge, and then not with so much the quadrants, but having those sort of images brought inside of that line. And so then having all of these things just like, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Those things go out there. I drew a picture, it's right here. But I think that like the meadows and the mixed conifer and even the wetlands to some extent with that grass coming in, I like the idea of the plants being kind of around the edge, and you have the animals more toward the middle a little bit. Kind of seems like if the oak woodlands were to move a little toward that area.
You go first.
I just want to say, first of all, great conversation. We appreciate it, as always. You guys are really smart in the way you're talking. I want to just ask this first one that everyone's very going back to. Just clearly, it has a division that each species or the flora, they're in their own division pretty much. Like they're all mostly got the owls together, the mushrooms. So that we departed from that, as you can see in these compositions, where there's a radial and then things are around it. So those are two different composition ideas. We departed from that look with the lines and sort of those like 5
Separate
areas. And so I guess I feel it would be helpful for us to know, do you prefer to see them all clustered in units, or is
More.
Do you
some
like
of
this
it
direction or there?
or in this way? And that's my first question.
I'm gonna let Ruth go, and then Nancy. I see you, Nancy. I'll let Ruth go first.
I think you did a great job of responding to all the input.
Absolutely. It's a lot of
Which
input.
was broad and varied, and great job. The reason I like the original
Sorry,
one.
should I go back?
if you can-
I just keep thinking like people online can't see
You
what
don't
our
wanna
printouts.
go there. And I know there was a lot of criticism about the various lines, but I think that's what made it feel more structured, more organized, and maybe made you think a little bit about what was represented there. Now, if you just replace the species names with Philomath and the Native American wording, it would seem like that could work. Now, I also like very much.
Maybe.
I think this one, and I'm holding up the wetlands one.
Christopher, what are you looking at?
I think that one worked very well. I like the realism of these icons, if you will, and it doesn't look cartoonish. Some of the things I know that Nancy really liked the texture that was added by lines and things, but to me, it makes it look more cartoonish and less, I don't know, less stimulating. It kind of reminds me of simple images, not even images, but stitching structures that people using quilting to create a border. You know, it's not really anything. It's just a little structure. So those are kind of my thoughts. I think maybe you could go both directions with something like this, these wetlands and the original mixed conifer. Both directions meaning simplistic icons and more realistic icons. You know, as Nancy pointed out, they're not going to be next to each other. So.
The one we've discussed that as well. That how big of a deal is it if there is quite a range between compositions, as long as it's tight within a composition. The only place that we could see that potentially be an issue would be if the icons were then used in the kiosk to tell the larger story, then they will live more next to each other, which might need us to tighten them up at least a little closer together.
Well, I think one thing that could be done is, you know, if you do the kiosk or brochure that someone can carry around, let's just say we have a brochure. I just picked it up and I want to walk around and look at these. I don't know that you have to put the icons in the brochure. I think you could put, I kind of hope that they'll have something on them so you know which one you're looking at, but it could, you know, if it's the wetlands, it says that on it and you go to that and you look and I think if you put the information of what species are there or information about what that biome is, I don't know that you have to tie it exactly to your icons. So I don't, because if it were in a brochure, you're right, you'd be looking at all of that together and it could look a little off, but I think there are ways around that would still give people the information. And then Nancy has had her hand up for a while.
Apologies for the woofing in the background. I just wanted to say, I think I heard somebody make this comment and I just want to sort of flush it out because it could be a really interesting idea that if we did have the ring, the hard circle that people are going back to, bringing elements of the illustration to the outside of the ring. So like the simple marks on the rivers and riparian, there's like these little like star symbols that those could be on the outside with the type in addition to being on the inside. So there's like, the type isn't completely separate from the illustrations. And I also don't know if it's even possible with the casting, if like with the wetlands, the grass, could it stay on that outside rim and break through the circle? Like, is there a way to sort of not have it feel so rigid, circle type imagery on the inside? Is there a way the illustration can sort of bust through that circle or just be incorporated on the outside with the type? I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to like make it not, I like how fun they feel and I don't want it to start to feel rigid. But I also agree, I don't want it to feel cartoony and childish either. And then the last thing I wanted to say, these are really hard to critique because there's so many elements. There's a lot to critique. And to break it down and talk about each part individually is challenging. But I did want to say that I think that responding positively to the ones where the icons are similar in the style within the piece. So like the wetlands one, they have more detail. And then the initial first one that you showed a few weeks back, they're all iconic and simple. And so they look like they belong together, like they were drawn by the same person. So.
What about, Nancy, may I ask, the oak woodlands? They're all flat.
Yeah.
Does that, so that flatness versus, so the flat in the, I'm sorry, is it the oak woodlands?
Oak
Yeah,
Savannah.
the Savannah.
Oak Savannah. And then the wetlands. So those are two good comparisons of a
Yeah.
flat on the left of, we're looking here. And then the wetlands definitely has more dimension.
The wetlands has some salt. I think maybe I'm responding. It's so hard when you look at something and you have like an instant connection to it and then trying to like break down what it is you're responding positively to. But I think it might be the solid blacks in the wetlands, like with the birds that really like give it some depth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's missing from the oak savanna.
Can we see the, your little Photoshop action, which you keep saying is, I think it's amazing. You keep saying it's,
Yeah,
it's
wow.
not much, but
How did you do
Yeah.
that?
yeah, because
A lot of experimenting until it works.
Christopher is.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to, it was quite a while ago, I think, but Deanne was asking about the initial design and sort of the complexity when you were talking about engagement. I do think that's a big part of it, was like it almost felt like an abstract like pattern, but then if you stared at it long enough, you're like, oh look, there's a little acorn there or something. And I do kind of like that. I'm not exactly sure how the committee's feeling. It feels like we're going in a few different directions right now. But I do think that's something that a lot of us were drawn to in that one, was that it wasn't, it was a little more like, oh, and then if you stared at it a little longer, like, oh, look, those are mushrooms. So I think you could lean into that if that's the direction we're trying to go and make it even more sort of patterny. But I'm not clear on how the committee feels about that. I just think to answer some of the previous questions about what we liked about that one, I think that's definitely part of it. And then I think just to respond to what Nancy and y'all were just talking about, I personally, I don't love the wetlands one for the reason I talked about earlier of it doesn't seem as sort of polished as some of the other ones, just in terms of it's not, it doesn't have that sort of radial pattern feeling. But I do agree that I think having some of that more, like there's basically, I know we're not printing them, but it's like there's just more ink on the paper. And I think that gives it a little more visual interest, where all the rest of them are just these very sort of thin lines. So if there's, again, we're telling you like a million different conflicting things. So good luck.
Well, I think there's a thread though to some of it, which is like looking for a way that to make a person look at it a little bit longer. And if it's too obvious right off the bat what we're seeing, then there's not a reason to stay engaged. So increasing complexity, whether it's, I mean, and I think that's actually, we're kind of getting at the same thing other than just this, reaction to style, but the wetlands, the drawings themselves are more detailed. So there's more to look at. And then in the original composition, the composition itself offered a lot of complexity. So I think we need to bring in essentially layers of meaning and complexity that allow a person to stick with it a little bit longer overall.
Can I hear from the committee? One of the earlier questions was, do you like having the icons, similar icons grouped together, or do you like that they're spread out throughout? I think that was a kind of a base level question that I don't know we've heard from the committee on.
I'm neutral on that one. So however the rest of the committee feels.
Well, I think it's more of exactly what you just were talking about. Like, I don't care necessarily if all similar things are together. I think it's more the engagement factor, I just for perspective, like these are going to be what, 3 feet?
2 feet.
2 feet?
Mhm.
So like the wetland bird,
Put
it'd
two
be
pieces of
like
paper together.
8 inches tall, is that, so like the bird would be this size? Is that,
Yeah, because it,
well, so like if this
22,
is,
that rotated basically.
Does anyone else have a comment about the groupings?
Yeah, I like the groupings. I just thought they looked, and with the lines, I just thought they looked, simple. It just kind of simple, but not being too simple. And it just shows you how, we just have our all different opinions. I like white space, having a lot of white space when I read something. I don't like looking at one size font because I feel like I'm being screamed at. If it's all the same, especially if it's big font, so I just thought the first one that you did was just so good. It fit what we wanted, and that was the flora and the fauna. And, go ahead.
I have a thought. So the first one, can we go back to that, please? There's an organization there that has, the species, again, they're in groupings.
Mhm.
So there's a similar size, again, to
Yeah.
what we're seeing here, which is fine. And we can mock up 1 or 2 of these in an orientation this way for you to see. You don't have to completely make a decision tonight. Like, to see a couple of these, we have the icons now, in a similar idea with some divisions and groupings together. So that would mean those species might be more similar in size when they're not, like
Right.
when
Mhm.
a bird is bigger than a
I'm
flower,
sure.
but that's fine. I mean, if that's something that we definitely can do, because it's hard to visualize it in your mind, right? What some of these might look like in a similar composition.
Right.
So I think that is one way. Then these are thicker lines, there's no question in this first one, than some of the ones we use the line weight. So that would make a difference. Coupled with the text and the ring, that'll make a difference. So I think we need another round to sort of look at what we're hearing tonight, with not necessarily every single one, but at
Maybe
least
at least one
one
to
or two,
see what
yeah,
that could
just
look like.
to see if this is a little bit more in the direction, going
Mhm.
kind of off of this, but with our new icons.
Can
Is
we
this-
go around the room and
Yeah.
see if you all think that would be
That
valuable?
would be very helpful.
Okay,
Yeah, that
Sally.
Yeah.
Okay, and can we go around the Zoom and hear if that would be valuable?
Well, I see Nancy has her hand. Is that a hand of agreement or a hand of wanting to?
I just wanted to say, I wonder if what people are responding to in the first one is that it looks like a pattern. It is more of a pattern than a bunch of imagery together. And I think that's, does that sound like what we're responding to? If you, I don't know.
You are the one who started the pattern conversation, Nancy. Let's just remember that.
I always think back to one of the first examples you showed us was of fish. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, it was like a bunch of fish swimming in a pattern it was a metal inlay. And I always thought, gosh, it'd be so cool if we did patterns, because it's abstract. It makes you want to look a little closer. But yeah, I mean, I think that maybe that's a way to unify it, is that it is a series of patterns. I had said I wasn't sure about the lines. I just didn't know why they were there. They didn't make sense to me with the flow of the pattern, but I can be convinced. All right, I'm done.
No, super quick. I agree, Nancy. When I first was looking at these, I was thinking that I've kind of flip-flopped after listening to what Ruth said too, and about staying longer and thinking longer, and then the idea now, because even in the wetlands, like the heron and the camas and the Canada goose are not size, they're not to scale, but I like the idea of thinking about that, like you said, so the camas is the same size as the blue heron. That's interesting because, like Ruth said, it makes you think a little bit more. And then if you do have the species to associate it with, it can become a whole, either a really cool thing for kids to go, let me do a crayon rub, this is awesome, or to sit and think deeply about how these species interact.
I guess, just to answer Chelsea's, I think it was Chelsea's question, about sort of, and our designer's question is about coming back. I think that might be good. I do personally just feel very strongly about having them share the same like visual language through all the designs. I know that you aren't going to be seeing them all at the same time, but I just think it's all this like it. I've been to a lot of cities where it's really clear that like they did one street in 2005 and then they did the next street in 2015, and you're like, oh, these don't look the same. And I think since we're doing everything all at once, we have an opportunity to sort of like make it cohesive and show that off a little bit. And I think it just, especially since we're theming the whole downtown and everything, I think they should all go together.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like we had our act together a little more.
Sure.
But that's just, I guess, where I'm at with that. And then I guess just the thoughts on sort of the patterns. I do think I do kind of like the patterns and picking it out. I'm not sure exactly how the community feels about that. I feel like sort of the ones you showed today might be closer to what people expect. But that's up to me.
Well, I do want to say though that I sent this design out to the city council, and I received a little bit of feedback, but I received nothing that said this doesn't seem like the direction we would want to go or the community would want to go. So I think, that you need to feel confident. You're all doing a great job of going through all this. You're doing a great job designing, and that's what you're here for. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that's just sort of my thoughts. I do really want them to look like the same visual language. And then I do think it's, I feel like we're giving you sort of these conflicting things of like, it should be somehow more complex, but less busy. But they should be covered in art, but like there's just patterns everywhere and everything. But in a way where it's easy to sort of, if you look at it, see what you're looking at. I'm
going to say something real quick. So I think it sounds like you have a place to move forward now. Do you feel good about that for next set maybe?
My
Do you have any other
only
questions?
question is, I think I'm getting the impression that we're moving more toward the abstraction. So away from the wetlands as it appears now.
I think that sounds more like
Where we got to,
Yes.
that roundabout way.
Not that people didn't like that, but I think that we have
Yeah.
to stay focused and try to get on something cohesive.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and that fits the process, because to get to the super simple icons requires essentially drawing it over and over and over until
Right.
until you've eliminated everything unnecessary. So, just to be honest, like the wetlands was the last one that we did. So it's not as far.
And I think you said
removed.
that you weren't to the point.
Yes, yeah.
You had to stop somewhere to get here.
It's good to know that then essentially we just keep moving in that direction as far as the drawings themselves, and then I think we
Play with
have
the
what we need for a
composition.
composition.
I'm gonna go back, we'll look at what we had and groupings in sections for patterns to see how that evolves with the new icons that we drew.
Okay.
And I think the new language, the ring, division, and maybe bringing some of the elements in and out of the ring, the little pattern elements or what we pull out. Yeah, I think we can go from that. We also have some bike rack things to show you too, but
Chris has a comment.
No, I just want to make sure that I wasn't sure if there was consensus on the outer ring and the text, because we've kind of gone back and forth, but you were summarizing, everybody was nodding their head, so
I think
you're on the right track.
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, and the next round, not sure we have to have a formal meeting, but it's up to you, Chelsea, on how you want to run this, but I don't think we'll do all 5 again.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
we'll probably do a couple, and you know.
Make
see
sure
where
that
that's
they're-
going. Yeah.
They're in a good
We're
spot
dialed
before
in.
you
Yeah.
spend more time.
Yeah.
I think that's good. And
Smart.
we can also share things in between via email. If you have a question
Mhm.
that is causing you to be unsure about their direction, I can solicit feedback from them individually and give you feedback. So that's always a possibility. Just let me know.
We've asked you to do a much more, I mean, this is a much orders of magnitude more complex critique session than last time because we showed you two incredibly different things and asked you to pick one or the other last time. And now we're showing you 5 things that are in a spectrum and asking you to give us highly nuanced feedback on that. So I think this is good. And I feel like we've gotten enough
Okay.
to understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before you move on to the bike racks, because we're getting late on time, what I'd like to do, if you're okay with this, is have you present the bike racks and say what you want to say about the designs. And then I would like to get them sent out to everyone and have everyone digest that. And again, I can gather some feedback, or we can talk about it at our next meeting.
very
You can watch
short.
it.
Yeah.
It's just 2
So-
slides.
And
without-
actually, it will probably change a little based on
But
this
based on
conversation
those,
we
which
just
is
had.
fine. But
Yeah.
let's look at
They probably
them,
will.
and then
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
do discuss them at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think they're just, we just took
Oh, yeah.
icons like this, but these are also just pulled from what we just did. And so if we end up doing more pattern-like sections, we probably would have the same in these
Sure.
small patterns, in sections. So is that all we have?
We
Kind of showing it
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Either would look, yeah. So the one big constraint with these essentially is that there can't be any negative space. Like you can't just have a floating
Right.
shape in nowhere. So everything has to be kind of sliced and diced so that it all becomes one single form. And so we wanted to see how this would look just mocked up on a photo of a existing bike rack with Andrea's cool bike. And so you can see that the ones that are a little bit more detailed, which I assume now we'd be moving away from something like this, the cut marks are much more fine. They look a little bit more solid. And this showing you two here is to show that essentially when you show them actually cut out, it's pretty hard to see with the background. So I just left them in white so you can see that. Because they just, when bikes get next to them,
Mm-hmm.
then
You hardly see the
simplicity
design.
Right.
helps
Right.
quite a bit. So.
Okay. Well, let's maybe revisit that. We'll send it out, and if anyone has any particular comments or just brainstorming
But that'll
about,
change now.
because they'll
right?
change.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the design's going to be a lot
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we did consider this idea that the Timbertown theme more in this, because we're not trying to represent 5 biomes here, we're just making one design. So pulling more from the conifer side, and maybe this is a place that an axe is a little bit more appropriate. I'm not sure if we're trying to talk about timber. We didn't love that either, but
We're trying to figure out how to bring the Timber Town theme in through icons without the logs cut down.
Yeah.
The axe, the sharp blade is a little frightening.
It is kind of,
The tree element, I think, is good.
Yeah.
I mean, we have other
Just the
elements.
trees up.
Yeah, we have other
Yeah.
elements in the project.
I mean, that
are
is timber.
the timber. The light poles are timber. Then so
Okay,
that's,
so we don't
I
have
think
to have
that's
an
being
axe and
represented.
stuff
I
like
don't
that.
think so.
Okay.
I think
You talk about forest.
Yeah,
Forest
exactly.
management.
Right. Right.
I feel like at least like a log or a wood cookie more than an axe. But yeah, I really like that first bike rack design.
Could
Just
you imagine doing
Yeah.
a wood cookie
That
on
one's-
the?
I really
here and
like
keep
the
all the-
animals.
Yeah, but you know what could be cool is
If you
Mary's
could
Peak.
take out the
Mary's
stump
Peak
and
could
the
be cool.
axe.
Yeah.
Because it's like
Yeah.
kind of the right
Yeah.
shape to
Right.
fill that.
Yeah,
That would be
it
cool.
could. Mary's
Okay.
Peak.
Mary's Peak
Yeah.
could be cool
Good
because
Mary's
it's the
Peak.
I mean,
right
that really
kind of
simple
shape.
Mary's Peak. And I do believe
with
that
trees.
Yeah,
and
I
this
think-
can be any shape, right?
I believe that, yes, when I talked to the bike rack designer, I don't know how much additional cost. He did say if it's really complex, he has to send it to someone, it's a little bit more. But you can make them, like the top could be Mary's
could be
Peak
Mary's
instead
Yeah,
of,
that's cool.
Oh, that's
So-
cool.
Yeah.
that might be-
so I
Yeah,
think
very
that that's a
cool.
possibility.
That'd be rad.
I like the wind icon.
Yeah.
what's up then. Is there anything else that our designers need from us? I feel bad. I feel like we've given you a lot of conflicting feedback, but is there any other questions or anything else we can send you off with that would be helpful?
Just one thing I think on timing, because we
Mhm.
technically only have 2 weeks left on
Right.
this project.
Let's you and I look
Just
at
touch
that,
on that later.
and yeah, so I can touch bases with several people and see. I feel like there is room, and I think I told you that. I just have to get the deadlines, and we'll back up again from it. Yeah.
And I believe that our real target for this was the city council meeting. that was
Right, and we may
existing,
just
so-
have to take it to a later city council meeting. That's fine. Yep.
Did we,
Because we want it right.
have we adjusted the time from it all, from the time that the,
We did a
Pick up
little
at
bit, yeah, we had the option to. I think that we have some more wiggle room in there actually to adjust it. So I'll look at that.
I don't feel
Sam.
like we're that far from,
No, I don't think we are either. I think it's just a matter of making sure that we have time to
Right.
get the feedback.
So let's talk about that, and so that we can try to take some of that pressure off, because again, we want to get this right. So,
And I think
yeah.
that getting a couple more mock-ups based on feedback tonight can happen within, I feel like it can happen sometime next week, getting those for more feedback, and then from there, we can build
Yeah.
out more.
Okay.
So I don't think it has to be a huge extension, just,
Sure.
it might need a little bit, but
Okay.
we can talk about it.
We'll look at dates. All right, well, Christopher,
for-
we want to wrap this thing up?
Are we setting a meeting date right now, or
I
think we already had one scheduled, didn't we?
We did.
The
I don't have my
27th?
Phone with me. I think it's, yeah, the 27th.
okay,
Are we all good to, I think we're still gonna meet then. You two probably won't be there, but we'll try to bring whatever materials we have, and wherever we're at in the process at that point, we'll bring it forward, have a discussion, and get it back to our designers.
We can
What
be
day
there
is
if you
that?
want us to be.
Okay, if you
The
feel like,
27th?
yeah,
what day?
the 27th.
I don't know, I just wrote down.
I believe it's a
You sent us
Wednesday.
An invite, so it's already.
Oh, good. Well, look at me.
I
All
already
right.
planned on it.
Okay.
Wednesday. Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, if you feel like you're in a good place to be there and it's productive, we'll do that. If we need to, we'll look at pushing it out to adjust it, but I'll keep everybody posted.
Thank you.
All
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for putting up with us.
Yeah.
and I'm sorry I am not there in person. I look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks. But with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:53 p.m. and we will see you on the 27th.
Great.